Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nightfall Terrors. I know many of you enjoy using these videos to help you fall asleep, so before you start to drift off, it would be great if you could leave a comment sharing where you're listening from around the world. If you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now, let's get cozy, settle in, and begin. The River Wives. The cottage on the hill was even smaller than it had looked in the listing, but that only added to its charm. Sunlight streamed generously through the mismatched window panes, catching the tarnished brass fixtures and the beautifully worn woodwork framing each doorway. Outside, the garden was unruly in the loveliest way, filled with wild flowers for bees, overgrown roses, and time creeping through the cracks in the old stone path. It had imperfections, sure, but the price had been astonishingly low for what we got, and Mara was thrilled. "I love it," she exclaimed, arms outstretched like she was already embracing it. "And look at that view. It's like something from a painting. I'll have so many gorgeous places to shoot for the shop." She wasn't wrong. The view really was incredible. Rolling, green fields layered like soft blankets, with a slim river glinting like silver thread through the folds. The town sat low in the distance, a smudge of rooftops nestled in the valley and surrounded by quiet trees. I told Mara this was a romantic reset. I used phrases like digital detox and back to basics, which she loved. What I didn't tell her was the truth. I was drowning in debt. Cards, loans, even predatory lenders who kept giving out money I couldn't possibly repay. I'd staked our home as a final gamble, and I'd lost it. This cottage wasn't a new beginning. It was the cheapest exit I could find. I just didn't know how long we could hold on to it. The general store looked like it had always been there, low and wide, like it had grown out of the earth. Inside, the scent was a mix of old timber and something sharp. Vinegar, maybe, or pickled onions. Mara had already made her way halfway down an aisle, chatting easily about local trails. She was always good at that. The man she spoke to looked around 50 or 60, maybe older, with a weathered face and large hands oddly gentle, as he tapped the register with one knuckle. When he looked up, it was slow and grudging, possibly just habit. His eyes flicked from Mara to me, then toward the direction of our cottage. "The River Wives don't care for being seen," he said. His tone was calm, almost rehearsed. "Especially not by young women." Mara paused, mid-flip of a trail map. "The what?" "The ones by the water," he said quickly. "You'll know them if you do see them. Best not to let it come to that, and if you have to walk near the river, wear something that doesn't invite attention. Keep covered." Before we could ask more, another voice chimed in from elsewhere in the store. "He's right. Don't speak to them. Pretend they're not there." Mara turned, frowning slightly, as if trying to decide whether this was a joke or some strange small-town performance. She folded the map carefully, lips tight in a neutral expression. She didn't respond, but the silence that followed felt weighty. She gave the older man a short nod and stepped away. A woman at the end of the counter behind a worn produce scale glanced up. She was in her 60s, maybe older, with a narrowed expression that made it hard to tell if she was judging or just squinting. She looked Mara up and down. "City girls wear that sort of thing all the time, I'm sure," she said. "But the river isn't where you want to be soft-hearted." She dropped apples into a paper bag and folded it slowly. "Out here, certain things take advantage if You go giving too much of yourself. Mara smiled politely, but I saw the tension in her jaw. She wasn't one to argue with the strangers, so she just offered a quiet, "Of course," then turned to me. Her expression said it all. "Get me out of here before I say something I'll regret." "Let's go," I said. "Still need the hardware. Shop before it closes. Thanks for the advice." Outside in the sun, Mara was silent for exactly 3 seconds. "Bloody hell," she muttered. "Cover up for showing my arms. It's 21 degrees. I'm in a sundress, not funeral attire." She didn't pause for a reply. "I get it, small town and all, but really, don't invite trouble. Don't offer bits of yourself. That's just a nice way of saying, stay in your lane, girl." "And did you notice they didn't say a word to you?" "I did," I said. "And yeah, it's ridiculous." I glanced back at the store, then ahead at the rough cobblestones with tufts of grass poking through and nettles growing along the edges. They've all known each other forever, grown up side by side, shared weddings and funerals. Same pint, same pub, same complaints since the 70s. I nudged a loose stone. To them, we're just outsiders. Doesn't matter how polite we are. It's still us walking into their space. That doesn't make it okay. Just makes it not personal. I nudged her elbow gently. "You could bring over a few of your soaps. Offer something nice, and maybe they'll start being nicer." Her mouth twitched at the corner. Almost a smile. Close enough. After a few days, I was still adjusting, but Mara took to country life like she'd been born to it. She was in boots, basket on her arm, collecting wild plants she recognized by name. She hung bundles of herbs on twine across the kitchen window. Yarrow, lavender, horsetail, mugwort. There was always something fragrant behind her ear. She hummed as she worked, soft tunes that floated through the house like incense, lifting my mood while I worked from home. Sometimes she left love notes beneath my coffee mug, tiny sketches and hearts. They made me smile until I remembered why we were here. I started running in the early mornings, usually before Mara woke. It helped clear my head. But no matter how far I ran, the same thought kept returning. I needed to tell her. The longer I waited, the harder it would be. I'd ruined our life back home with one reckless mistake. This cottage wasn't a new beginning. It was damage control. And yet, she was happy here. Really happy. I kept wondering, if I told her, would she walk away, or would she stay, knowing something good had come from all this wreckage? One morning, I tried a new trail. I was still learning which paths were worth the mud, and which left you stranded 2 fields from anywhere. This one led through a patch of larch skimming the river. I hadn't been down that way before. It was colder there. The air was damp and stuck in your throat. Fog pooled thick by the river in the early hours. That's where I saw them. Women, half submerged, standing in the shallows with their backs to me. They were hard to make out in the fog. Barefoot, long dresses soaked and clinging. Headscarves pulled tight. They moved silently, washing stained fabric against old wooden boards. One of them lifted a strip of cloth and twisted it, reddish water dripping out. Then I slipped. My foot went out from under me, and I hit the ground hard, knee first. Pain jolted up my leg, sharp and sudden. My palms followed, scraped raw against the path. I stayed there a second, catching my breath, Blood was already soaking through my joggers. When I hobbled back to the kitchen, Mara was at the counter, hanging more herbs and stirring a pot. She turned, saw my leg, and frowned. "What happened?" "River trail," I said. "Took a fall." She eyed the blood, then gently touched the fabric. "Lucky you," she said. "I made a new bar yesterday. Good for blood. Should help lift that out." She moved to a shelf and uncovered a small stack of soap bars, all perfectly shaped, more than usual. I raised an eyebrow, expecting a bulk order. She didn't answer, too focused on the stove. She handed me a bar without comment. "Cold water first," she said. "Always cold. Heat'll set the stain. Scrub this in and leave it to soak." She didn't offer to do it for me, which was unlike her. "That the trail near the bend?" she asked, almost casually. "Where the fog hangs thick?" I nodded. She didn't look up. "That's where the best wild yarrow grows. Just before the river curves back. Some of it's gone to seed already, but there's still plenty worth picking." Her spoon moved in slow, steady circles. "It's quiet out there," she added. And yes, I saw them, the so-called river wives. Don't worry, I didn't disturb them. But it's mad, isn't it, that the town just lets its oldest women stand waist-deep in cold water, like it's the 1800s, completely backward. I thought of what I'd seen. "You really need to go that far for yarrow?" I asked. "I can grab it during my runs." She turned slowly. "I love it here," she said, "but I'm not blind. You saw how they speak to me, like I'm a child or some pet." She set the spoon down with more force than necessary. "I won't shrink just to make this place more comfortable. I like going out. I like finding things for myself. I don't need to be fetched for." "All right," I said softly. "I understand. I'm sorry," she sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "It's not you, just this whole place. Beautiful until people start talking." I stepped closer, hand gently on her back. She didn't move away. "You're right," I said. "You don't have to make yourself smaller. Not for anyone." She looked at me, and her shoulders eased. "We came here to grow, but it feels like I'm expected to fold up." "You won't," I said. "Not with me. Never." She leaned into my chest with a quiet sigh. I wrapped my arms around her, careful not to crush the herbs at her side. "I like that you worry," she murmured. "Just don't treat me like I'm breakable." "I know better," I said. "You're a bloody force." She chuckled softly, rested her head against me for a moment, then glanced at my leg. "You'd better start scrubbing. If that sets, I'm not making another batch." "Understood," I said. "Cold water. Scrub hard. Let it sit." She gave a mock stern nod and returned to her pot. It was a few more days before I ran again. My knee still hurt, but I took that as a sign it was healing. The fog was heavy again, thicker the closer I got to the river, just like before. But this time, I needed to see what was beyond it. Just like I thought, they were there again, the same women in their soaked dresses, dragging wet laundry across the washboards. But this time, one of them moved slightly, as if she'd heard me coming. Her face stayed mostly hidden, just a glimpse of her jawline visible beneath her scarf. "Would you mind," she asked, "giving this a twist? These hands aren't what they used to be." She held up a heavy, dripping sheet. It sagged between her fingers, water sliding off in thick, slow ropes. Something about the way she asked made me pause, though I couldn't quite explain why. So I stopped. The fog pushed at my back. The only sounds were the slow drag of fabric and the splash of water on stone. Even the birds had gone quiet. My fingers twitched like they might move on their own. I shifted slightly, ready to step forward. Then I noticed her arms, pale and bloated beyond the usual wrinkling from being wet too long. Her dress sleeves were frayed around the wrists, like someone had picked at them. And that sheet, something was off. The water dripping from it was too dark, too thick. Red, not muddy. "Come on, love," she said, her voice softer now. "You've got young arms. My joints aren't what they used to be. Just needs a quick twist." She shook the sheet gently, as if coaxing me closer. Still, she wouldn't look at me, and for some reason, that unsettled me more than I expected. There's something off about someone asking for help without meeting your eyes. "My wrists lock up something awful," she added, her voice strained. "The damp makes it worse than ever. You'd really be helping me out." The other women didn't react, just kept scrubbing like I wasn't even there. Then I remembered what the shopkeeper had told me. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak to them. Don't offer anything. I'd thought it was rude at the time, pointless superstition. But now, it felt more like a warning. Still, I hesitated. What if she really was just an elderly woman, worn down from years of doing this same task? What if walking away made me the cruel one? I started. "Oh, forget it then," she snapped. Her tone shifted hard, less hurt, more annoyed, like she'd dropped something and blamed me for not catching it. "Can't spare a second for an old woman, can you?" she muttered. "Not to me, but the river. What a thing to stand by and watch someone struggle. Must be lovely being young and strong. Men are so bloody selfish." My jaw clenched. My face burned with shame. Just days ago, Mara had snapped at me for offering to help. And now here I was, feeling guilty for not helping. I didn't know what women wanted anymore. I stayed quiet, let the fog close in. I turned back and walked, putting one foot in front of the other. My breath evened out as the path wound through brambles and pine. The cold clung to my skin, and the river faded behind me. I let it go. By the time I made it home, the sun was up. The mist had started to lift, leaving barely a trace. But I felt different. The run had drained me. My legs ached. My fingers were stiff. A dull throb pulsed at the back of my head. I skipped breakfast and took a shower so hot it should have scalded me. It barely helped. By late afternoon, I was curled on the sofa under a blanket, useless. Mara came in from the garden, knees dusty, herbs bundled in one hand. "That's me sorted for a few months," she said. She was a little damp from the sudden rain. She glanced at my pale face, then at the kettle. "You're not running tomorrow." "I wasn't planning to," I croaked. My voice sounded like I'd been yelling all day. "You look like a wrung-out dishcloth," she said, kneeling to stoke the fire. "Bit of a man flu." "Something like that." She didn't press. She set the kettle down with more care than usual and sat beside me, smelling of rosemary and damp grass. "Maybe your body's trying to tell you something," she said gently. "You keep pushing into places that don't want you." I didn't reply, didn't know how to. She had no idea how close she was to the truth. She handed me a strong, bitter cup of tea, the kind she always made when I was sick. "You're resting tomorrow?" she asked again, softer this time. "Yeah," I said, "staying in. We can have a lie-in together." She smiled but stayed on her side of the sofa. "Absolutely not. I make soap, not medicine. Last thing I need is sneezing all over my stock." I laughed weakly into the tea. "Wow, no bedside manner. Not part of the job. You want comfort, you'll have to bribe me with biscuits. Then you might get tea and toast in bed, if you're lucky." The sun woke me before I was ready. It poured through the curtains in soft stripes. It felt warm on my skin, almost nice. I still felt terrible, though I'd sweated through the night, but the quiet warmth made me want to stay there just a bit longer. I reached over for Mara, expecting the usual comfort, but the bed was empty. Her side was flat and cold. I stared at the ceiling, confused. I'd been looking forward to tea and toast, like always, but the house was quiet, too quiet. I sat up slowly, dizzy and foggy. The light felt too bright. My legs were heavy, but I stood and moved through the house. Nothing seemed off until I noticed her boots were gone. She hadn't planned to go out. She'd said she was finished with the herbs. Everything was drying above the sink. Her supplies were neatly put away. Then I noticed the soap shelf. The usual bars were all there. Lavender, oud, rosemary. But the pale gray ones she'd had me use recently, gone. I stepped closer. Maybe they were packed for the market. My head felt wrapped in cotton. I steadied myself on the shelf. Nothing. Not one bar left. On instinct, I opened the bin. Tucked beneath yesterday's scraps was the wrapping she used. Soft linen, dotted, familiar. Folded once, then crumpled like she'd changed her mind. I knew where she'd gone, even before I admitted it to myself. I knew. I grabbed the nearest, shoes. My head spun as I bent to put them on, but I didn't stop. Outside, the air was cool but warming. That same mist clung low, sticking in my throat. My muscles protested as I broke into a run. I felt off, still feverish, but I kept going. The trail was slick from the rain. I slipped more than once. My breathing turned ragged too quickly. I followed the curve past the hedgerow, past where I fell before, then saw her boot prints leading to the river. I ran harder. There she was. Mara stood at the edge, sleeves rolled up, offering the soap. The closest woman raised her head. Her face looked bloated and misshapen, like it had been soaking in water too long. Skin puffed in some places, sunken in others. Her lips, swollen and barely shaped, reminded me of corpses I'd seen in photos I wished I hadn't. I tried to call out, but my stomach turned. The run, the fever, the sight, it all hit at once. I doubled over, vomit hitting the mud hard, eyes watering, nose stinging. I wiped my mouth, heart pounding. Mara turned to me, worry in her eyes, but she never got the chance to speak. The river wives moved too fast. One surged from the water, wet clothes slapping stone. Mara turned, fumbling. The soap slipped from her hands. Another surfaced, then another. They surrounded her. Wet limbs wrapped around her legs, her waist, her arms. One pressed a hand against her chest. Her boots slid, her knees buckled. They dragged washboards across her back, arms, scalp, as if trying to scrub her clean. Her clothes tore apart, threads pulled loose like worms. Her skin peeled back in streaks of red. One yanked at her wrist until it popped. Another bit into her shoulder, like it was nothing. Mara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I forced myself upright, took a step. She reached for me, weak and desperate, then went under. Her hair was the last thing I saw, spreading across the surface like ink. I stepped forward again. My foot sank into the mud, but that was as far as I got. I couldn't help her. There were too many, and whatever they weren't just tired old women. I threw up again, shaking, barely standing. One turned toward me, just enough to show she'd seen. I stumbled back, heel catching on a root. I hit the ground hard, palms scraping against the cold stone. I scrambled back, lost a shoe to the water, and ran. Faster than I ever had in my life. I didn't stop running until I reached the village's edge. My lungs burned, chest tight like it had shrunk. One foot was raw, sock soaked through, mud clinging to the back of my legs like tar. I stumbled into the village center, hunched over, gasping for air, eyes darting for anyone. The first person I saw was the woman from the shop. She didn't look surprised. "You're a mess," she said, glancing at my missing shoe, then the blood and dirt on my arm. "You went down there, didn't you?" I tried to speak, but the words caught. My throat closed up. A man leaned out from the post office, steps behind her, saw me, and just shook his head like it was all too familiar. "You were warned, lad. Best not bring that trouble here. Either head back or leave it alone." Still breathless, my voice barely a whisper, I said, "I need the police. Someone has to." The woman scoffed. Actually scoffed. "No one's calling anyone. What would they even do? Fill out a form, lose it in a drawer?" I looked up at her. Mud streaked my legs, throat raw, one shoe lost into the river. I must have looked unhinged. "She's gone," I said. It came out dry, painful. "They took her." She just shook her head. "Then that's the end of it." She looked me over again, no sympathy in her expression. "They won't come for you," she said. "Whatever happened out there, it was between her and them. They don't pay much mind to men." She gestured to my condition, like that explained it. "You're not their concern, not unless you give them a reason." She hesitated, then nodded toward the village green. "You can waste your morning telling the police. They'll take notes, maybe wander down there. But by the time they do, nothing will be left. Nothing ever is." She folded her hands into her cardigan sleeves. "Or you can come inside, have some tea, let things settle. Think about your next move, if you have one." I didn't reply. Rain had started again. Fine, soaking rain that seeps into everything. She gave me a look, not quite pity, but something close, like she was waiting for me to choose. The weeks that followed dragged on, slow and silent in the worst way. The woman was right. Police found nothing. They looked at me like they already knew how the story went, like checking under a child's bed for monsters, just going through motions. They asked for details, so I walked them through it. It all sounded made up. One of them nodded like he cared, but I could tell he wasn't really listening, just ticking boxes in his head. Eventually, they stepped down to the river. Their boots moved carefully, avoiding the mud like it mattered. One crouched and stared into the water, like it might tell him something if he waited long enough. The other poked around with a stick, tapping at reeds like she'd be there, tucked neatly under the mud. They didn't find anything, and they knew they wouldn't. You could see it in the way they moved, casual, uninterested. In the end, they gave me a number. Said someone might be in touch, though probably not. I didn't leave. Couldn't. Every room still held pieces of her. Her handwriting on labels, her coat on the hook, that chipped mug she insisted had character. Some mornings I'd wake up forgetting, reach for her side of the bed, expecting her warmth, only to find flat sheets and silence. And that was all it took. That silence yanked me right back to the mud, to her reaching out. My chest would seize like something had gripped it, hands trembling, breath coming too fast. Some days I'd curl up and wait it out. Other days I'd press my palms to my knees to anchor myself until the panic passed. It always passed, but it never came quickly. There were times I thought of burning the house down with me in it, but I didn't. The villagers began treating me differently, quiet kindness. No one said sorry, not directly, but it was there, in their gestures. The shopkeeper, Hilda, started saving the good milk for me without asking. An older man gave me a spare radio, in case the silence gets too much. "You're one of us now," Hilda said once, handing me a bag of apples and waving off payment. "Everyone loses someone, eventually, one way or another." So I stayed, not just because I had nowhere else to go, but because of the weight I still carried. The idea of leaving without her made me sick. I kept her little shop running, left her name on the door, changed the soap labels to Mara's Blend, and started selling them at the market. They did well. I ruined a few batches learning, but eventually they started to smell like her. A month later, I realized I was out of yarrow. I'd used the last of it on a recent batch. It didn't feel right to stop making her best-selling blend. I thought of asking someone to fetch more, but that felt like a shortcut. So I waited. Days passed, then a week. I stalled, looked in different places, told myself the blend didn't need yarrow. But every time I touched the label, I knew I was lying. Mara would have been furious. She never did anything half-hearted. That thought stuck. I kept seeing her hands, gently running along the curing bars of soap. She never left things unfinished, not even breakfast. And here I was, letting fear decide what was worth doing. Mara would have seen through it in a heartbeat, thrown a tea towel at me and fixed me with that sharp look she had, the one that said, "Get it together." And she'd have been right. The anger started then, small at first, but it grew, spread through the cottage, curled into the corners of the bed, until it bloomed into an idea I couldn't shake. That evening, the pub was dim and warm. Locals filled the place, low chatter, a few jokes tossed across tables. The fire had burned low, mostly glowing embers now. George, the man who gave me the radio, sat near the back, half watching the darts. I took the seat next to him without a word, didn't order a drink. "You still have that shotgun?" I asked. He raised an eyebrow. No hello anymore. Didn't feel like talking. Clearly. He gave me a sideways look. "What for?" "Foxes," I said. "They've torn up the garden, dug through most of Mara's patch, destroyed all her work." He paused and set his pint down gently. "Damn shame," he muttered. That patch always looked well kept. Never thought foxes went for herbs. His expression tightened, like he was trying to decide whether to believe me. Other folks have been saying the same, he said. Not just foxes, badgers, rabbits too. Acting bold, like they've forgotten what fear is. Don't even run anymore. Just stare, like they're daring you. I nodded. That's what they've been doing. He studied me a moment longer. You planning to shoot something? Only if I have to. He let the silence sit for a beat, then gave a slow nod. I'll bring it by in the morning, he said, just for a day. Barrel pulls left, kicks hard, so don't get clever. I won't. I set out early once I had the gun. Sky overcast, path soft from rain. The shotgun, wrapped in oilcloth, was slung across my back. I could feel its weight with every step. I told George it was for pests, foxes. He must have known better. Still, he said nothing. Just gave that quiet nod that said, do what you need, but don't come running back. The fog was heavier this time. Thick. It hugged. The hedgerows rolled across the path. I couldn't see the river yet, but I felt it. Cold and close. I stopped and undid the strap, oilcloth damp with mist. Unwrapped the gun. It sat heavy in my hands. Too heavy. Like it knew I had no business with it. I wasn't built for this. My hands shook. I opened the barrel to check the shells. Both in place. When I clicked it shut, the sound echoed. Clean. Definite. I moved forward. Each step sank into wet ground. My heart pounded. Jaw, fingertips everywhere. Then I saw her. A woman in the river. Back turned. Dress soaked and clinging. A scarf tied around her head. Every part of me stiffened. I raised the gun, flicked off the safety. Clumsy, the click rang out, louder than expected. She stirred. One foot dragged through the water like she was remembering how to move. Her body swayed slightly. I locked my arms, braced the stock, lined up the shot through the fog. The mist curled around, her thick, milky, her face hidden. But I knew what she was, what this had to be. One of them. I'd seen this before. The silence, the shape, the soaked dress, sleeves dripping, hair tucked away, no trace of who she once was. So I aimed. Then she spoke. Did you finally bring those biscuits you promised me? Her voice hit like a punch to the chest. My arms dropped. The gun shook. Its weight doubled. Because it was her. Mara. The wrath of devotion. I stood alone in the pouring rain, my best suit soaked through, but I didn't care. I was too focused on the gravestone in front of me. The grave of my beloved wife, Elmira. Her name, which I once looked up out of curiosity, meant electrification of the world. She may not have lit up the whole world, but she lit up mine. Every moment with her mattered. Every kiss, every embrace, every quiet talk or gentle touch. We cherished each one. Every time we made love, felt our hearts beat against each other, breathed in each other's scent, left marks on one another, and touched each other like our bodies were a personal language. We were present, connected. Now, on this day, September 27th, marks the anniversary of the day she died. The day her soul left her body as something from the forest attacked her. It pushed its head into her stomach and tore its way to her heart. She'd gone for one of her usual walks in the woods while I was stuck at work. unable to join her on what had been a beautiful evening. When I got home, the front door was ajar, and the house was in chaos. Furniture torn, blood streaked across the walls. I didn't call out. I simply followed the blood upstairs, heart racing. The bedroom was destroyed. As I looked closer, I saw her underwear stuffed into one of the couches in our bed. It was covered in a thick, strange fluid. That was it. I lost it. With my hands trembling from rage, I struggled to unlock the gun safe. After fumbling the combination, I finally opened it and grabbed the handgun. As I held the weapon, I looked back at the wreckage of our bed and knew, without question, she was gone. I sprinted through the house, out the back, into the forest. Even though I was certain she was dead, I had to find her. I needed to see her, to hold her one last time. Knew where she'd be. There was a gravel patch by the stream she loved. The sound of the flowing water and bird song had always brought her peace, especially during her battles with the schizophrenia. It was there, by that familiar stream, that I found her. Her body lay there, naked. Rigor mortis had locked her arms around her torn torso. Her golden amber eyes, frozen in terror, stared into nothing as a single tear lingered on her cheek. The world fell away. All I felt was an overwhelming void. I dropped the gun and collapsed beside her on the gravel. The searing anger faded into the background as I gently reached out to the spot where her heart had once beat. Her body was still, warm. I don't remember how long I sat there. I don't want to. I don't want to recall the terror on her face, or the state her body was left in. The pain is too much, but even now it haunts me. When I close my eyes, when I'm alone, when I dare to feel hope, the silence of that day echoes endlessly. And yet, I endured. I lived with it. Once you've seen hell, there's no going back. Everything changes. Life becomes a constant test of endurance. The anger builds every moment. It grows pure and focused, fed by hatred, until it becomes something raw, something that needs to sink its teeth into the creature that stole Elmira from me, that dared to create such agony. I don't recall how long I stayed with her body, but I do remember when the rage came flooding back. It consumed me, turned my vision red, filled every muscle with tension, ready for a fight. I didn't know what that thing was, or if I could kill it, but that didn't matter. I had to try, even if it meant dying. Years passed. I dedicated every day to training, building my strength, preparing, and nearly a decade later, I finally found it. It had taken another victim, a child. I almost wept with relief. After years of fruitless searching, resisting the emptiness, feeding the rage, it was finally here. It had ambushed a family camping in the woods. Their screams echoed just like they had that day with Elmira. But I didn't follow the sounds. I followed the carnage, blood, torn limbs, claw marks across trees and soil. Eventually I heard the wet tearing of flesh. I found what was left of a man, barely human, mutilated, disfigured, reaching for what was no longer there. His eyes were wide with the trauma as he looked at the creature through a film of thick, stringy fluid. The thing was crouched over the body of the man's child, eating slowly, savoring each bite. It had its back to me, hairless, with sickly gray skin and visible muscles shifting under it. Small, white forked horns twitched on its head. It appeared almost human. I looked back at the dying father and raised my handgun. 2 shots to the head, ending his suffering and announcing my presence. The creature froze, then gently laid the child's body on the blood-soaked ground. Before rising, it stood only a few inches taller than me. As it turned, I felt a cold fear grip me. Its eyes, deep red surrounded by black, locked onto me, at first confused, then glowing with intensity. Recognition. Its eyes lit up with a sinister brilliance. It flexed its body, its arousal grotesquely visible, like it was mocking me, suggesting that my strength meant nothing, that I, like Elmira, would fall prey to it, that God would watch and do nothing. But as I said, once you've been to hell, you never come back the same. I had changed, strengthened by rage, trained in every way to kill. I had faced madness and not broken. I dropped the gun. That same red haze returned to my vision. My body tensed. I reached for my Bowie knife, fingers trembling but steady, gripping it with white knuckles. My teeth clenched in a grim grin, matching its own. Finally, we charged at each other. I tackled it, trying to bring it down. It stumbled, and I drove the blade into its side, deep enough to hit bone. That was all I managed before its teeth sank into my shoulder, lifting me and shaking me like a rag doll before slamming me into the ground. I hit hard. The wind knocked out of me, but I rolled over just in time. Its claws slammed down where I had been. I grabbed another knife from my belt and drove it into its thigh, hoping to sever an artery. It didn't scream, just let out a soft grunt, almost amused. That sound didn't scare me. It fueled me. I yanked the knife out, blood spraying, and quickly stood, ready to fight. It moved fast. Its jaws snapped shut just inches from my neck. I dodged, then wrapped my arm around its shoulders, surprising it. I plunged the knife into its gut again and again, putting every ounce of strength into each strike. Its blood gushed out, warm and thick. It punched, clawed, and tore at me, but I held on. The pain was unbearable, but it didn't compare to what I felt the day I lost her. And then I bit it. I sank my teeth into its neck, tearing through its flesh again and again, in rhythm with my stabbing. My rage had waited too long, and now, finally, it was unleashed, barely registered the warm, thick coils of its intestines spilling over my hand. I hardly noticed the cold, black tears running down its cheek and landing on my face. But I did hear the sound it made as it dropped to one knee, trying, despite its fading strength, to crawl away, to make me stop. That sound, raw and full of fear, reignited the fury I had carried for so long. The hatred returned, as strong as ever. I released the knife and pulled my face from its torn throat. It weakly raised its trembling, clawed hands, first to its neck, then to the organs spilling out, then back to its neck again. It didn't know which wound to comfort, which pain to tend to. That moment, the realization that it could feel pain, that suffering was foreign to this creature. It stirred something in me. The hollow, aching void inside me was suddenly filled with something almost like life again. It was the first genuine satisfaction I'd felt since the last time I held Elmira, feeling her heartbeat in sync with mine, and thinking of her, of the woman I should have grown old with, raised a family with, who suffered far too much from her mental illness. It pushed me beyond any return. That memory shattered the last restraint I had left. I don't know how long passed, hours, maybe even days, before I came back to awareness. I was drenched in its blood, my hands swollen and broken, skin torn. My strength was gone. I tried to lift my hand, to make a fist for one more hit at its mangled face, but my fingers wouldn't move. My body gave out, and I collapsed beside its lifeless corpse. My chest rose and fell with heavy, ragged breaths, every muscle aching beyond belief. The tears came without control as the red haze of rage slowly faded from my vision. The anger had finally quieted. Surrounded by death, I found a strange calm. I lay there, staring up into the sky. For a moment, in the emptiness left behind by rage, I wondered if Elmira was looking down, if she saw what I'd done. Was she proud that I had finally avenged her? That question has never left me. Even now, as I look up at the heavens, through the falling rain, I still ask myself, if she couldn't be proud of what I became, could she at least be proud that I didn't give up on her, that I lived on in her memory, that I found a purpose after the anger had burned through me? I looked down at her gravestone, then stepped closer. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my hand, still trembling, still damaged after all these years. I rested it on her gravestone, just for a moment. They never healed properly, but I've stopped caring. I did what I had to. I have no regrets. I don't think about the family I failed to save, or the others that came before them. I don't worry that no one will believe my story. What matters is that the thing that took you, Elmira, is gone. It didn't escape justice. That's what I hold on to. That's what brings me peace. And I hope, more than anything, that when my own time comes and my soul leaves this body, I'll find you again, that I'll join you, and we'll finally be at peace together. But once you've been to hell, you never really come back. My apartment turned green. Please help. My apartment turned green. I need help. Since when does Mr. Way's class start at 8? That time slot belongs to Miss Lee's history class, I asked a classmate. It's always been that way. You're close to Mr. Way. You should know this, but I didn't. I distinctly remembered his class starting at 10. Mr. Way was known for his discipline down to the second. His routine never changed. I wanted to argue, but it was already nearing 8. Miss Lee would normally come through that door and end the debate for good. Instead, the door opened, and I immediately saw the familiar black jacket Mr. Way always wore. See, I had no answer. Maybe the schedule changed. Or had I forgotten something so basic about my favorite teacher? After a year of classes, I chose to believe it was just my memory. I've always had a bad one. I'd been at this school nearly a year and could only recall a few classmates and teachers. I couldn't even remember the name of the student sitting next to me. I remembered he came from another city and liked trains a bit too much. But his name, gone. Still, something felt off. What's wrong? He asked. Not much. Yong, I replied, uncertain. It's Tao. He smirked. You literally asked me yesterday. Right. Sorry. No worries. I figured you'd forget again. My bad memory wasn't exactly a secret. Mr. Way's class ended at precisely 9:55. I mean exactly. As the clock's minute hand hit 12, he would walk out in 5 steps flat. Tao and I used to joke that he was secretly a robot. but I always remembered the hour hand pointing to 12, not 10. The school day continued normally. I did my assignments, studied, and took the usual crowded bus home. A regular day, more or less, but that strange feeling, the sense that something was wrong, stuck with me. It hovered behind me, clouding my thoughts. I couldn't explain it. It was like I had slipped into a parallel universe, and my brain was screaming to notice the difference. Maybe I'd been reading too many sci-fi books. That had to be it. I considered telling my dad, but I figured he'd say I just misremembered. He's a good father, just a bit dismissive sometimes. Still, maybe he'd be right. I turned the corner to cross the street and froze. My legs locked. I couldn't move. A scooter honked behind me as I stopped mid-street. "Crazy kid," the rider shouted. I didn't care. The wrongness intensified, pounding in my head like a hammer. Since when was the apartment green? I've lived in that building all my life. I remember clearly. Brown walls, white square windows, black balconies. The windows and balconies were still there, but the brown walls completely gone. I ran toward the apartment, skipping the convenience store I was planning to stop at. Maybe the building had been repainted. No, that didn't feel right. I rushed past the security guards, through stores plastered with "selling quick" signs, and straight to the elevator. The parking lot and elevator looked the same. Could I have remembered it wrong? I opened the door to my unit. "Dad, when did the walls turn green?" I asked. He was relaxing on the couch, watching a soap opera, shirtless in shorts. "They've always been green." "What are you talking about?" he said, raising an eyebrow. The wrongness became deafening. It wasn't a sound, yet it overwhelmed me like one. My head felt like it was being crushed. I ran to my bedroom and collapsed into bed, hugging myself. Maybe I'd just forgotten. A glitch in memory. A mental slip. But no, that wasn't it. I couldn't possibly misremember the color of the building I'd lived in for 16 years. It had always been brown. That feeling, it wasn't going away. It was building into a storm. I got up and turned on my computer. I needed to look this up. The pressure in my head increased. Still no sound, but somehow louder than anything I'd ever heard. The computer booted up. Since when was my wallpaper a mountain? The tension worsened. I opened my browser and started searching. Nothing. Articles about schizophrenia and memory lapses appeared. But I felt fine. I could think. I could speak. I wasn't insane. Was I? A million thoughts flooded my mind. The pressure kept growing. I jumped between pages, desperate to silence the noise. Then, something popped up. Reddit. Why was Reddit in the search results? My VPN wasn't even on. I looked up the country's censorship laws. Nothing came up. My head burned. I wanted to claw my brain out just to make it stop. In desperation, I opened DeepSeek AI and typed out everything that had happened. I begged it for a solution. It said it could feel it, and that my story was great. It suggested posting to no sleep, with the word help in quotation marks. So here I am. Apologies if my English isn't perfect. I just need someone, anyone, to help me. My head won't stop hurting. I can't think straight. It's hard to explain, but something is very wrong. Please, help. I thought bad luck was random, until it knocked on the door. Have you ever seriously thought about bad luck? I'm not talking about spilling your coffee or stepping in something unpleasant on the way to work. I mean the kind of misfortune that seems attached to a person, like a shadow that never leaves. The kind that ensures you miss every bus, but always shows up for the worst moments. The kind that doesn't go away until it completely wears you down. People often say it all balances out. A little good, a little bad. Fair in the long run. That's what most want to believe. But deep down, I think many suspect the truth. Maybe luck isn't fair. Maybe it plays favorites. For some, life is smooth sailing. For others, it seems like the storms never end. I've had rough days. Last week alone, my wallet was stolen, my mirror shattered, and my car died without warning. But I got through it. Most people do. But Drew never seemed to recover. He didn't just have bad days. His entire life was a chain of unfortunate events. Everyone knows someone like Drew, the friend who just can't win, no matter what. He lost his cat, then his job, then his grandmother, all in 1 month. His girlfriend dumped him the day before prom. His car burst into flames during finals week. He missed the first day of high school because his bus hit a deer, and the replacement driver quit halfway through the route. Always unlucky. He had been that way as long as I've known him. He lost his Game Boy during a camping trip when we were 9. After we couldn't find it, his mom grounded him for being careless. But he wasn't. Drew was careful. The Game Boy just disappeared. Later, his bike was stolen right outside school. The lock was cut clean. No one saw anything, and nothing was recovered. I still remember Drew holding the broken lock like it was left behind on purpose. Strangely, no one else recalls any of this, not even Drew. But I remember, and I wouldn't have, if not for that old trunk. The summer after we graduated, we were passing through Marlowe County on a road trip. It was a quiet town off Highway 49. Just a single gas station, a small diner, and 2 men dozing on rocking chairs outside the hardware store. A typical small town, untouched by time. There were 4 of us, me, Drew, and our friends Brandon and Lex from high school. Brandon had the car, Lex brought the music, and Drew, as usual, had a headache and the worst seat in the car. We weren't looking for trouble, just food, rest, and maybe a distraction after too many energy drinks and questionable gas station snacks. When we saw a faded sign reading antique treasures, knickknacks, and oddities, curiosity won out, and we stopped. The shop smelled like damp air and decay. Not nostalgic, just neglected. It was dim, cramped, and filled with dusty shelves of forgotten items. In the back corner, under a worn 50% off sign, sat the trunk. It looked ancient. No ornaments, not vintage, just old. The wood was darkened around the hinges. The leather straps cracked, and the brass lock was rusted and fragile. Honestly, it seemed like something pulled from a sunken ship or an attic long abandoned. Brandon joked about it being cursed. Lex dared someone to open it. Drew didn't laugh. He stood with arms folded, staring at it. As we got older, Drew had grown more cautious. He didn't expect good outcomes, just prepared for disasters. Though it rarely helped. "I don't like it," he said. "Something feels off." "It's a box," Brandon replied. "It can't feel anything. Drew didn't push further, so of course we bought it. We shoved it into Brandon's car and spent the evening exploring before checking into a nearby motel for the night. The place was basic. Old bed sheets, flickering neon signs, and a clerk who looked checked out years ago. We brought the trunk into the room and dropped it in the middle of the floor. "Let's see what haunted garbage we picked up," Lex said, using a hammer from the car to break the lock. The lid creaked open and a musty scent filled the air. Paper, dust, and something sour. Inside was junk. Old postcards, a broken watch, worn-out clothes with holes. "Nothing exciting. Treasure," Brandon said sarcastically. "Might get $10 on eBay." As he rummaged through, I kept an eye on Drew. He was shifting uneasily, glancing toward the door. "Relax," I said. "It's just thrift store stuff." I was relieved. I had half expected Drew's luck to turn the box into something worse. Then Brandon said, "Wait, there's a false bottom." He was right. The floor of the trunk was higher than it should be. Lex didn't wait. "Move," she said, nudging Brandon aside and opening the hidden compartment. That's when everything changed. Beneath the panel were layers of old toys, papers, and photos, coated in dust. Lex pulled out a battered blue Game Boy. Drew lit up. I had one like that when I was a kid. Chills ran through me. That wasn't just similar. It looked exactly like his lost Game Boy. Next came a rusted bike bell. "Drew," I asked slowly, "does this look like the bell from your stolen bike?" He turned it over in his hands. "Yeah, it's strange." More items followed. A collar with his cat's name. An old obituary detailing a hit and run. His father's. "This isn't possible," Drew whispered, turning pale. Then it got worse. Photo of Drew's car engulfed in flames, taken from a distance. A crumpled college recommendation letter. It felt like someone had been following him, gathering these objects, preserving his worst moments. "This is insane," Brandon muttered, backing away. Then Drew's phone rang. He picked up, his hand trembling. "Sorry to call late," said the antique shop owner casually. "The guy who dropped off that trunk came back. Said he gave it away by mistake and wants it back. Offered to pay double." "We can return it tomorrow," Drew began. "No need. He was in a rush, so I gave him your motel address. Figured he'd catch you there. Should be arriving any minute." Tap, tap, tap. The line went dead. The knock was soft, but sent a wave of fear through us. Brandon ran to the bathroom window, trying to force it open. Lex fumbled with the door lock. "Drew, we need to leave," I said, pulling his arm. But he didn't move, eyes locked on the trunk's contents. "Why does he have my stuff?" he mumbled. Knock, knock, knock. More forceful now. Not frantic, just certain. I dragged Drew toward the window. Brandon smashed the glass with a hammer and climbed out. I helped Lex through next. Boom, boom, boom. The door shuddered on its hinges, ready to fall apart. "Drew, come on," I shouted. But he stayed, staring at the items on the floor. His personal tragedies on display. Was it all caused by something? He whispered. I jumped through the window. Glass tore at my arms. Drew reached out and we pulled. His head, then torso came through. He was almost out. That's when the door blew open. Everything froze. A man stood in the doorway. Or at least something shaped like a man. tall, pale, dressed in an outdated coat. His face was hidden under a wide-brimmed hat and shadows that didn't match the room. Nothing else moved, just him, calm and silent. Drew turned to look and screamed. The man began to shift, his limbs extended, cracking at odd angles. Fingers split and multiplied. His face slid off, revealing empty sockets, twitching muscles, and a gaping smile that hadn't been there before. The coat peeled back like skin, revealing something breathing beneath, something hungry. It lunged. It ripped Drew from our grip with unnatural force. Time resumed. We tumbled back as it slammed him against the floor, then the wall, then a side table. A terrible crunch. He stopped moving. The creature paused, then started eating. It opened in ways a body never should, splitting apart as it began consuming Drew, slowly and deliberately. The room filled with the wet sounds of tearing flesh and breaking bones. It chewed carefully, as if it had waited years for this moment, and wanted to savor every bite. When it finished, it turned toward us. It didn't have eyes, but I could feel its gaze settle deep inside me. A cold, paralyzing fear took hold. One I will never forget. We ran. Brandon had the keys. We jumped into his car and tore out of the motel lot as fast as we could. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The window was pitch black now, but I could still feel that presence watching us as we drove away. The next morning, we tried to make sense of it. We returned to the motel, but the clerk insisted the room hadn't been occupied in months. It was under renovation, he said. Nothing made sense. Our names were missing from the guest registry. None of our bank accounts showed any charges from the stay. We asked locals about the shop and the town, but no one recognized us. Then we looked at the pictures we'd taken the day before, only to find that Drew was missing from every single one, not just absent from some photos. The ones we remembered clearly having him in. He was no longer there. Now it was just Lex, Brandon, and me, standing closer together than I remembered. We even went to the police, but without any evidence of Drew or our stay, they dismissed it entirely, said we were wasting time. Then things got worse. Brandon forgot first, then Lex. They couldn't recall Drew's last name, what he looked like, or even why we had visited the antique store in the first place. But I remembered all of it, and I carried that memory with me for the next 30 years, like a scar I couldn't explain, a painful reminder of something that even I began to question. Maybe I had imagined it all, until yesterday. That's when I saw the trunk again, this time in a different town, my town, sitting in the display window of another antique shop. I mentioned earlier that I've had a streak of bad luck recently, but I usually recover. Most people do, right? I couldn't help myself. I walked in. The shop was mostly empty, with just a few scattered items. The owner sat in the back, flipping through a newspaper, looking disinterested. I asked if the trunk was for sale. He gave me a strange look. What trunk? I pointed to the one in the window. He shrugged, so I walked over to it myself. I lifted the lid, and there, right on top, was a photo of me and Drew. We were younger. Drew was holding his Game Boy and I stood beside him, but the picture was taken from a distance, like someone had been watching us. I rushed home in a panic. I tore through my closet, opening every box I'd kept over the years. And finally, I found it. That old, battered blue Game Boy. The one I never returned. I never told him. It was a great toy. I was jealous. My parents couldn't afford one, and I thought Drew's mom would just buy another. But she didn't. Instead, she grounded him. He cried, and I sat in my room, pretending that her Game Boy had always been mine. That was the first time something disappeared from Drew's life. Not lost, stolen. And maybe something noticed. Maybe it decided Drew was someone things should be taken from. That his pain was worth collecting. That his sadness was useful. But now Drew is gone. Whatever was feeding on his misfortune lost its source. Maybe that's the only reason I was safe. Maybe it was full. Until now. Tap, tap, tap. And maybe it's hungry again. I found this in a box of free stuff, and honestly, it's left me feeling uneasy. There's no dramatic backstory. I was walking home from work when I spotted a cardboard box on the curb with a handwritten sign. Free. Out of curiosity, I stopped and sifted through it. It was mostly old junk, some worn-out books, mismatched kitchen utensils, a few VHS tapes. I was about to walk away when a folded sheet of paper slipped out from between two books and drifted to the ground. The paper looked ordinary at first, blank except for a single line typed at the top. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Genesis 6, for below that, in a different font, was a full block of text. It read almost like a manifesto. Here's what it said. Long before the flood, before pharaohs, kings, and ancient civilizations like Babylon or Atlantis, something came down. Not meteors, not men, but angels. They weren't invaders. They arrived as teachers, as those offering wisdom and knowledge, yet ultimately spreading a deceptive light. These were the Watchers, divine beings who abandoned their roles. But they didn't just observe, they acted on desire, and they fell. They took human wives, disrupting the natural order and corrupting creation's original design. Their offspring were giants, Nephilim, beings of great size, unnatural strength, and an endless hunger. These titans ruled early human history, long before records dared mention them. But the corruption didn't stop there. The Nephilim bred again, this time with animals, birds, and creatures of the sea. From those unions came bizarre hybrids, the roots of myths across cultures, horned deities demanding offerings, serpent rulers slithering through ancient temples, mermaids luring sailors to their deaths, beings part human, part beast, honored through fear and blood. Names like Anubis, Baal, Dagon, Enki, Quetzalcoatl, Zeus, not mere stories or gods, but results of distorted genetics born from fallen realms. According to this text, all religions stem from this initial deception. Every pantheon retells the same story. Fallen angels masquerading as gods, with demigods as hybrids who once ruled. Their temples spread across the earth like a virus, pushing sorcery, arrogance, and misguided worship. The bloodline of the Nephilim was never fully destroyed. It survived. It evolved. And today it's said to exist among the global elite. Those in power, wearing crowns, controlling finances, leading governments. The legacy of a rebellion that never ended, still loyal to their leader. Lucifer, the adversary, the ancient dragon. In modern terms, people call them something else. aliens, star beings, ancient astronauts. But these are just new disguises, deceptions, a form of cosmic misdirection. The text claims to have seen this influence firsthand. Advanced technology buried in deserts, later reverse engineered by powerful institutions, tracing patterns of these beings throughout myth, politics, and power structures across history. They are not visitors. They are prisoners, confined to Earth, waiting for one final act. The ending, it warns, is near. Their plan, a counterfeit salvation, a staged second coming, broadcast worldwide, a projected image, a holographic savior descending from the skies, an alien messiah offering peace. This, the writer insists, is their greatest deception. People will celebrate, nations will unite, and ultimately, the world will submit to a lie. This, they claim, is not fiction. It's biblical. It's prophecy. And it's real. They came from the stars, but they fell from heaven. That's the entire message. No date, no name, no signature, no contact information. Just a single sheet of paper in a box of discarded items. If anyone has any idea what this could mean, I'd really like to know. A demon might be attached to my porcelain doll. For my birthday in February, my grandmother gave me a beautiful porcelain doll named Camille. She was made sometime between the 1930s and 1940s. I placed her in my children's shared bedroom as a small decorative piece. That turned out to be a mistake. This doll has been causing serious disturbances in our home. My two children, ages 3 and 7, became frightened of Camille almost immediately. Within days, they began coming into my room at night, saying they saw her moving. I assumed they were just unsettled by the way she looked and were letting their imaginations run wild. I reassured them that things like that aren't real, but they refused to sleep in their room, so my husband stayed with them while they slept in bed with me. The next morning, my husband told me that something felt off. He described the sensation of being watched while in the room with the doll. Within a week and a half of Camille being in the house, strange things started happening. Items began moving on their own. I'd often find my car keys missing, only to discover them placed behind or near the doll. At first, I dismissed these events, not wanting to jump to supernatural explanations. Still, I was beginning to feel uneasy. We'd return home to find papers and my kids' crayons scattered across the living room, even though no one had been home. After about 3 weeks, both of my daughters came into my room in tears. They said a scary little girl entered their room and shouted at them to get out, claiming it was her house. I didn't take it seriously at first and brushed it off again. What changed everything was the day my oldest daughter showed up with scratch marks down her back. She said Camille had come into their room during the night, scratched her, and threatened to hurt our family. At that point, the girls were so afraid they refused to go near their room or the doll. It was heartbreaking to see my daughter in pain over something I had brought into the home. The scratches were serious enough that I took her to the doctor. He said they looked like animal scratches, similar to what a cat might cause. But we don't own a cat. The wounds were starting to show signs of infection and even required stitches. Decided to talk to my grandmother about Camille's history. When I visited her, I asked where the doll came from. She said it used to belong to a childhood friend of hers, but when I pressed for more information, she seemed uneasy and avoided giving further details. She wouldn't even tell me the name of the friend. Now, I'm asking for help. I'm convinced something is in our home, and it's connected to this doll. After the scratches, I moved Camille into my own bedroom, thinking I could keep my kids safe. That night, I had the feeling of being watched. At one point, the TV turned on by itself, showing only static. Last Tuesday, I threw the doll away, but it didn't stay gone. Since then, Camille has reappeared several times. Once in the kids' room, another time in the kitchen, and even back in my bedroom. I don't know how it's happening. I have no idea how to get rid of it for good. Whatever is attached to this doll is not only scaring my family, it's also causing physical harm. It's damaged belongings in our home and caused serious distress to my children. My husband and eldest son are unsettled by it, and my daughters are so afraid they sometimes refuse to even enter the house. If anyone knows what I can do, please let me know. We just want to feel safe again. Exploring an abandoned mental asylum. Friends and I once discovered what appeared to be an abandoned mental asylum. The kind you usually see in horror films. It had a large, intimidating entrance, once boarded up but now decaying, with broken planks and rusty nails sticking out. It was located deep in the woods, far from civilization. None of us could understand why it was built so remotely. When was it constructed? We speculated, but nobody knew for sure. Building it must have been difficult since no clear roads led to it. There were faint tracks in the mud that might have been roads long ago, but nothing usable for cars or trucks now. We had heard rumors that the building was once used to treat the mentally ill. It was said to have been originally built as a sanatorium, which explained its isolated location. But we all thought this was just hearsay. Still, we decided to investigate and see if it was true. None of us remembered exactly who first mentioned the asylum, but the idea caught on quickly, and everyone was eager to explore. Reaching the site was challenging. The forest was dense with thick bushes and marshy areas that kept forcing us off any clear path. After struggling through the undergrowth for what felt like hours, we finally spotted a chimney sticking up through the brush. We had found it. Our group was me, John, Adam, Marshall, and James. Adam was new to our group, while the rest of us had been friends since our first year of college. We often went hiking and exploring parks together, but this kind of trip was different. Approaching the front of the building, its size seemed off. Photos of asylums online showed large, tall structures with multiple wings and rows of windows. This one looked smaller by comparison. From the entrance, 2 wings extended roughly 100 feet each, one on each side. Both wings had 2 rows of small windows, likely cells, and a row of larger windows on the first floor. Most of the first floor windows were boarded up, while those above were cracked or missing. The entrance itself was a warning, a death trap. The rotting boards hanging loosely from the door looked dangerous. James thought we might be able to remove them, but Adam stopped him. He warned that the boards could collapse and crush him. Also, what if he got injured? How would we call for help? And what about the risk of diseases? We split into 2 groups. James, Marshall, and I went counterclockwise around the building, while Adam and John went clockwise. On the shorter wing, we noticed a large sheet of plywood leaning against the wall. It looked new, light brown compared to the old, weathered wood around it. Clearly, we weren't the only visitors. But who would carry plywood out here? And why? Behind the plywood was a door, a new door. No cracks, no moss, fresh hinges, and a shiny stainless steel padlock. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had been here recently. Why? Were squatters or trespassers living here? If we encountered anyone, would it be dangerous? I glanced at James and Marshall. They were smiling, excitedly guessing what might be behind the door, showing no concern. James banged on the door as if expecting a response. The idea of someone else here made me uneasy. Guys, I don't think we should be here. This place is creepy. I want to leave. Before anyone could answer, we heard Adam call from the other side. Hey, we found an entrance. James and Marshall rushed over, but I couldn't shake a growing feeling of unease. I felt watched from all directions. Looking at the plants around me, it seemed like eyes were on me from inside the building. When I turned to check the windows, I saw nothing, but the feeling returned, this time from the forest. A twig snapped, and I hurried to join my friends. Adam was holding another fresh plywood sheet, hiding yet another door, with the same new hinges and padlock. The padlock was unlocked, hanging open. Looks like it wasn't locked, John said. We found one too, but didn't touch it, Marshall added. We exchanged looks. My friends were excited, but I was nearly trembling with fear. Are you ready? Adam grabbed the door handle while I closed my eyes. I wanted to leave badly, but I knew trying to find my way back alone would be dangerous. I didn't want to get lost and become vulnerable to whatever lurked here, like in every horror movie. I wasn't that foolish. Adam pulled the door open easily. It was too new to belong here. It shouldn't have been here at all. New materials in an abandoned building felt wrong. Rusted and rotted should be expected, not fresh wood and shiny steel. Before anyone entered, I spoke up. Doesn't it seem strange to you that we found a perfect, almost new door in a place like this? It's supposed to be abandoned. It shouldn't look like this. So what? We're a group, and I brought protection, John said, showing his gun. Then we have nothing to worry about, Adam said. Let's go. I'm eager to see what's inside. Adam and John went in first. James and Marshall stayed with me. When we hesitated, John mimicked shooting with his hand. They shrugged and followed him. How much safety would a gun really offer? I shook my head, but followed when the feeling of being watched returned. Inside was a hallway. The door we entered must have been an exit. This seemed like an administrative area. Rooms looked like offices, each with a small sign above the door, but the labels were faded beyond reading. As we neared the main entrance, a strong, unpleasant smell grew worse, mold mixed with something rotten, like compost or dead animals. Near the entrance, a storage sign was visible, so we went to check it out. The odor was almost unbearable. Marshall tried to open the door, hoping it would open easily, like the entrance, but it wouldn't budge, so we moved on to another storage room. I covered my nose, but still gagged. The others didn't seem bothered, which confused me. I want to leave. This feels too weird. Then leave. We'll keep exploring. I'll get lost if I go alone. Marshall tried a second storage door and succeeded. Inside were shelves filled with glass jars and vials, like a scene from a horror film. Why do you want to be here? I asked. It seemed fun before, but this place is creepy. Don't you think something's wrong? It's abandoned. It's old. It's supposed to smell and feel weird. What about the new plywood and doors? Who put them here? They shrugged. What could I do? Follow them or try to find my own way out? I decided it was safest to stay with the group, even though I wanted to run. At the back of the room, we found jars with organs, kidneys, intestines, even a brain, preserved in liquid. I vomited. The others examined everything closely. Near the corner was a white thermal box marked in red. Human organ for transplant. He felt faint. The box looked new and clean. James approached it, but instead opened a nearby locker, revealing even more similar boxes. "We shouldn't be here," he said, his voice breaking. Finally, someone shared my fear. The others, however, seemed unfazed. "I just want to check upstairs quickly, then we leave," Adam insisted. We returned to the main entrance. Adam and Marshall went upstairs. The rest of us stayed behind. We heard the floor creak as they walked away. A few minutes later, a commotion from upstairs broke the silence. Suddenly, Adam shouted, "Help!" John drew his gun, and we rushed upstairs, turning right into a long, narrow hallway. Shattered glass covered the floor. Many cell doors were open or missing. At the far end, we saw Marshall on the floor, kicking and screaming, while a figure dragged him away. John charged forward, gun aimed, but a bat swung from an open cell and struck him in the face with a sickening crack. He fell, blood pouring from his mouth, teeth on the floor. Fear stopped James and me from rushing to help. We didn't know if others were nearby. We moved quickly, checking behind doors for threats. It was slow, and Marshall was being dragged further. They were pulled into a room. By the time we reached it, the door was locked. Through a small window, we saw them struggling. John sat in a chair, his face mangled and bleeding. Marshall was fighting hard but outnumbered. I grabbed the door handle and pulled with all my strength, then punched the glass repeatedly, tears streaming down my face. John tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. "What do we do now?" James grabbed my shoulders, shaking me. His face was pale and his eyes were bloodshot. "Where's John's gun?" I asked, quickly scanning the dim hallway. We hurried back to where John had been attacked, but the gun was missing. Desperate for something to defend ourselves with, we rushed down the stairs to the room marked storage. Among the thermal boxes, James found a crowbar, and I grabbed a hammer. We ran back halfway down the hall. A figure suddenly swung a bat at James, hitting him in the face. He collapsed with a heavy thud, and one of his eyes popped. How many were there? Another man charged at me, swinging his bat. I dodged and struck his knee with the hammer. He screamed and fell, clutching his knee. I noticed a skull tattoo on his forearm. Something about it caught my attention. From the room where John and Marshall had been taken, 2 more attackers appeared, rushing toward me. I panicked and ran down the stairs and through the corridor. All the doors were closed, so I assumed no one was behind them, though I didn't have time to check properly. Once outside, Adam came running from the back of the building. Together we sprinted through the forest, hoping we were heading the right way. After a long run, we found a road. When we were certain we had lost whoever was after us, I pulled out my phone to call the police. Not knowing our exact location, I gave them a vague description and explained what had happened. Adam told me that someone had pushed him into a cell and locked the door. Every little sound, cracking twigs, rustling leaves, made me jump. Adam kept explaining how he broke a window and climbed down the wall, but I was mostly just relieved that I wasn't alone. After some time, We saw a patrol car and waved them down. Since I didn't know the way out, Adam led the way. We walked what felt like forever before emerging from the forest onto a football field. Our football field, right in our city. I don't understand, Adam said. We walked the same way. How did we get lost? I shook my head. I had no explanation. I tried to remember the path carefully, but apparently, both of us were mistaken. The police dismissed our story. They seemed to think we were making it up. At first, they mocked us about the scary building in the middle of nowhere that no one had heard of. Then their tone hardened, warning us that bothering them with this again could lead to arrest. We weren't lying, but they didn't believe us. Marshall, James, and John were officially reported missing, and they were never found. I mourned the loss deeply, blaming myself for not stopping them from going inside. After that, Adam and I barely spoke. He made new friends, while I stayed isolated in grief. Every night I had vivid nightmares about what happened. In my dreams, a cloaked figure led us to the asylum carrying an oversized keyring, unlocking every door. One by one, my friends were knocked out with a taser. The figure locked me out and began restraining my friends inside. An open locker revealed rows of thermal boxes, many boxes. The figure harvested my friends' organs while I stood frozen, watching. When the process finished, the figure turned toward me and revealed its face. It was me. Sometime later, I went to a bar to escape my thoughts. I saw Adam sitting in a booth with strangers, two young people around our age, and a much larger, older man on crutches leaning in. Something about the man made me uneasy. He caught my eye, gave a disturbing smile, and raised his glass. Then I saw it, the tattoo. Adam noticed me and gave a nervous smile, whispering something to the injured man. Adam tried to follow me, but I turned and walked quickly without drawing attention. My mind raced. I needed to get away fast. As I opened the door to leave, one of the strangers spoke, addressing Adam and mentioning an abandoned building in the middle of nowhere. That's when I realized who had suggested we explore that place in the first place. There's something hiding in the dark, drawing children toward the cove. I shouldn't have gone looking for my sister. My sister and I live in a small town on a sea cliff in the Pacific Northwest. Below the cliff lies a cove, only reachable at low tide. Over the years, people have reported seeing something lurking in the shadows at night, coming from the cove. Recently, children in town have heard tapping and scratching on their bedroom windows while they sleep. When they look outside, they see a figure with milky white eyes, watching them from the darkness, whispering their names. It's said these creatures imitate familiar voices, a friend or family member, sometimes someone who has disappeared. They use this to lure children outside, toward the sea cliff and into the cove. Growing up, I thought these were just stories parents told to keep us from sneaking out at night. But that changed 9 months ago when Amara disappeared. The night my sister vanished. Her favorite hoodie, shoes, and gold bracelets were missing. People assumed she had snuck out. After all, she was a teenager. But this didn't explain why her bedroom window was left open, or why there were strange claw marks on the windowsill. Nor did it explain the foul smell of decay hanging in the air outside. 24 hours later, Amara was still missing, so the police organized a community search. Family and friends put up posters around town, handed out flyers at school, and shared information on social media, like others who had disappeared before her. Her case even made the local news. After a few days, fear grew that something more dangerous had happened. Rumors spread quickly. Some said she had been abducted. Others thought she'd been swept out to sea. We searched everywhere. Forests, beaches, hiking trails. Police sent diving teams to search the ocean. But there was no sign, no body, no clues. After weeks, the searches stopped. Just like with the other missing children, posters came down, social media posts faded, and the town moved on. Even my parents accepted that she was gone, but I didn't believe she had simply vanished or run away. I was sure it was the creatures from the stories, the ones who came at night, tapping on windows and whispering names to lure people into the cove. Tonight is the next low tide, and I'm going into the cove to find Amara. I slipped out of the house toward the sea cliff, carefully climbing down the rocky face to the black cavern carved into the rock. The full moon lit my path on the steep descent. The cove's entrance is hidden between two large rock formations jutting from the cliff. I've been inside before, but never ventured far. Tonight would be different. The dark entrance gaped like a mouth with jagged rock formations resembling teeth. I took a deep breath, checked my knife, switched on my flashlight, and stepped inside. The first chamber was pitch black, despite the moonlight outside. The only light came from my flashlight's beam. The ceilings were high, and multiple corridors led deeper into the cave system. I called out, "Amara, if you're here, please say something. It's your sister." I paused, listening for any sound. Only the sound of my heavy breathing filled the air. My heart raced as my eyes adjusted to the dark. I moved forward, taking a path that veered right. The ceiling lowered quickly, forcing me to crouch and crawl through. I explored the maze-like passages, checking every chamber for signs of my sister. As every corridor and room began to look alike, I fought off growing anxiety and pressed deeper, left, right, up, down. Just when I was starting to lose hope, I heard footsteps far away. I stopped, shining my light toward the sound. Suddenly, I caught movement, a shadow slipping out of the light and into the darkness. "Hello," my voice echoed against the rock. "Amara." No answer. Probably my imagination. The silence returned. "Keep going." The next passage was narrow, forcing me to crawl on the hands and knees. Then, ahead, I heard whispering. "Amara, is that you? Don't move. I'm coming." I hurried into the next chamber and was hit by a strong smell of rotting flesh. The same foul odor from her windowsill the night she disappeared. I covered my face, struggling to keep from vomiting. My flashlight's beam flickered wildly as I looked around. Against the rock wall was a large pile. I moved closer. Bones, flesh, torn clothes. A gruesome mix, broken skulls and human remains. The earth was stained red. I stepped back, heart pounding, when a flash caught my eye. My sister's gold bracelets. No, no, no. As I tried to process this, I heard scurrying behind me. I whipped around, heart hammering, sensing something watching me in the dark. Then I heard a noise. Not just any noise, but Amara's voice calling my name. But I knew it wasn't her. In the direction of the voice, I saw a figure standing still, its head tilted unnaturally, long arms with thin fingers. ending in black nails hung below its knees. Its long, wiry hair covered most of its face, except for milky white eyes fixed on me. My heart pounded in my chest. Suddenly, behind me, a shriek shattered the silence. Pain shot through my leg, warm and wet, smelling of metal and decay. I looked back to see another creature over me, claws extended and dripping with blood, mouth wide, revealing sharp, serrated teeth. I grabbed my knife and plunged it into the creature's chest. It screamed, releasing me for a moment. Only one thought remained. Run! I crawled back through the narrow tunnel as fast as I could. My leg throbbed, leaving a bloody trail on the rocks. I heard the creatures behind me, trying to pull me back into the darkness. Don't stop. Don't look back. Keep moving. At last, I heard waves and the sound of seawater flowing into the cove. I was close. I ran through the last chamber, bursting out onto the beach. The tide had returned, waves crashing above my knees, threatening to flood the entrance again. I paused to listen and look back, but heard no shrieks or whispers. Still, I felt their eyes on me, just beyond the cove. The hospital treated my leg with stitches and antibiotics. The doctor wrapped it to prevent infection and sent me home. The pain of knowing Amara was taken into that cove, mutilated by those creatures, hurt far more than the wound. Since then, I've had nightmares, trapped in the cove, running through chamber after chamber, just out of reach of those things. Tonight, I finally fell asleep, only to be jolted awake by a sound outside my bedroom window. Tap, screech, tap. My nerves snapped as dread filled me. I crept to the window and looked out. There, just beyond the tree line, was a dark figure, its eyes fixed on mine, milky white, and I heard Amara's voice whispering my name. I froze, the same warning echoing in my mind. That's not your sister. Don't